Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the April 23rd of the Town Council. Meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Dave Granessi.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much for all those people in attendance tonight. The exits are directly opposite me in the back of the room. If you need any help getting down the stairs, please let us know, and the elevator is off to the right. I will now call the roll. Mr. Chericello.
Good evening.
Mr. Webb.
Present.
Mr. Foote.
Good evening.
Mr. Flood.
Good evening.
Mr. Granessi.
Good evening.
Jim Yakrin acting, filling in for Erin Spencer tonight, who is on a business trip and may be joining us, and Owen will let me know if Erin calls in. Purposes of tonight's meeting, we have one agenda item. It's the fiscal year 25 budget and capital improvement public hearing. So I'm going to open it up and turn it over to our town administrator and finance director. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Town Administrator.
CFO.
Yeah, Councilor Spencer attempting to log in. Only currently working on that. But the purpose of tonight's meeting is to have a hearing on both the proposed FY20 town budget and the FY25 to 30 capital improvements program. And the council has seen a lot of this previous presentations, but some members of the public may not. So the three guiding principles we use to continue our financial planning. The town, as you all recall, is under a tax cap. So on our operating budgets, we have to attempt to anticipate any long-term trends which may prove problematic for funding services. So we continue to do a 5-year projection of operating expenses. During this year, as you know, we've had some inflationary periods the last 2 years, and in some areas that's really eroded our buying power. So this budget also addresses some shortfalls in repairs, IT security, and some other operational needs. And then we also continue to maintain that discipline of making sure that any funds previously allocated for capital, including debt service, stays on that side of the ledger. For an example, any retiring debt service is applied to the central fire station bond, as the council anticipated when you approved the bond about 1.5 years ago. For an executive summary, again, we operate under a tax cap. We are allowed to have the rate at $6.09, which is a 2.6% increase for FY25. We currently have 5 collective bargaining agreements approved in FY22, and 2 additional agreements approved this year. Those are fully funded, including we had about a 12% increase in health insurance costs. That's the largest increase we had in a number of years. We are proposing to consolidate 3 permanent part-time positions into 2 full-time positions, looking to add a second K-9 unit on January 1st, which provides Chief Feely with some flexibility in the patrol division. Also, due to the strong interest earning environment, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but the town did realize a significant amount of interest income, which essentially increased our unallocated fund balance. So what we're recommending is you take a portion of that and pre-fund the debt service. When we built the debt service for the Central Fire Station project 2 years ago, we anticipated using retiring debt service and other projects to pay the debt service, which is still the plan. However, we knew there was a 9-year period in which we'd have to apply some fund balance to stay within what we thought was going to be the tax cap and the CPI for those years. And so what we're suggesting is you actually pre-fund for those years this year, and also to stabilize the compensated absences fund. We've had our demographics for employees. We have a lot of long-term employees retiring with some earn time, and so we think it's wise to use some of that unallocated fund balance and to stabilize that fund. And lastly, regarding surpluses, as you know, we bonded the project a couple of years ago. We were probably 20% through the project, so we reinvested the proceeds. And so as a hedge against inflation, we would recommend transferring $1 million from that capital project fund back for the construction of it from the interest income. We've also talked about the challenge of securing paramedics for our fire department, and so the chief started a new program this year. We actually have training for 2 employees to become paramedics, and we'll continue that in this budget. And we continue to look at the implementation of the TIF districts and the programs for this year moving forward. And we're continuing to utilize some recovery trust funds on a multi-year stabilization of town finances on a declining balance, and we'll look at that in a minute as well. Now, we're gonna recommend two significant changes for the budget, which does not impact the town tax rate. So the budget, as noticed, had a gross appropriation of just over $77 million. That's a significant increase from last year, driven predominantly by a project at the wastewater treatment plant, which is one of the changes we are recommending for this evening for council action at your May 7th council meeting. To give you a little perspective, again, we operate under a tax cap. It's been in our town charter for over 30 years now. And you can see in the second column to the left, the actual change in the consumer price index, which gives you the allowable rate, and it shows you the actual rate after deliberations and approval of the budget by the council. And this is before revaluations. And this is another year where we'll be looking to adjust the values again to make sure that all folks are assessed equitably. So our assessing department completes all their new construction pickups prior to July 1st. So then we'll test that assessment amount against the budget you approve in May to ensure that we fall within the tax cap as required by the town charter. Here is a synopsis of the major variations in the budget. The wages overall are up about 5%. Most of our employees are receiving a 3% cost of living adjustment effective July 1st. We also have a couple of positions transitioning to full-time, so that all works into that number. You can see gas and diesel is projected to be down a little bit from previous budgets. Workers' comp is up. Workers' comp, employee insurance, and retirement system, those are pretty much a function of our employee grouping. So retirement system, there's not a change in rates this year. However, the increase is simply reflective of the increase in total wages. Solid waste disposal is up again this year, the tipping fees. Electricity will be down somewhat. Vehicle maintenance is one of those areas where we attempted to right size, looking at the increase in cost of maintaining vehicles, and also the number of vehicles we have. And debt service is down, and a majority of that $132,000 savings has been transferred over, applied towards the central fire debt service. We just talked about the budget stabilization resources. The council has been planning on these for the last several years pre-COVID, and you can see in your bottom left, that's a projected use of one-time revenues. You can see we're on a sliding basis, whereby by FY29 we do not anticipate the use of one-time revenues for recurring budget expenses. This is the budget which was posted in the advertisement for this public hearing. This is page 1, which is essentially all the operating expenses. The operating expenses, I'll show you on a different slide. It looks like that the operating is up 10.9%, but it's actually up about 4.4% because we have some of those aforementioned surplus influxes, which hits you can see the other municipal obligations line, which is the last line of the finance sector. That really impacts that, but that's an in and out, so it doesn't have an impact on your municipal tax rate. Whoops. Here we go. And this is the second portion of the FY25 town budget. Essentially the non-operating, the capital items, the wastewater department, the water, cable, TIF. Wastewater, water, cable, and TIF are all self-funding, don't have an impact on our tax rate. And so you see the total of $77,221,370 as advertised at the beginning of the process. And again, going to the bottom right-hand portion of the slide, you see that the tax rate is anticipated to be $6.09 on the town side. And looking at the numbers I just mentioned, the general fund appears to be up about 11%, but really from actual operating costs, it's up about 4.3%. Capital investments are up, but that's the gross basis. That includes the actual expenditure costs and not the payment costs. We try to level fund that from year to year. The capital bonds will be changing. That was the wastewater treatment plant project, and we'll get into that in just a moment. You have the water fund, the balance of your wastewater fund, cable revolving fund, TIF districts, and our offsetting revenues, which shows that the rate's going up to 609, which again is just under 2.6%. So the impact on the town side of the rate on a home assessed for $300,000 is about $45 a year. That's the increase. And we go through this process every year. Our town charter requires us to stay within a certain limitation of expenditures. This past year, our rate was $5.94. The CPI adjustment per the tax for the town charter, is 2.6%. So it's 15 cents, 6.09, and that's what we currently are projecting as a town portion of tax rate of 6.09. We talked about this a few minutes ago, where we had approximately $2 million in excess fund balance, primarily due some vacant positions on the expense side, but predominantly some significant earnings on investment on our idle cash. So we're recommending we pre-fund the unallocated fund balance portion of the central fire station debt for the next 4 years. We also stabilize the compensated absence fund to $675. We've been operating our capital improvements program, planning on an infusion of cash of $1.5 million a year. We're based upon our experience for the last 2 years and the price of vehicles and the price of building improvements, recommending we increase that to 1.575. And also, between myself and George, will be retiring. George sooner than me, lucky guy. We have a transition cost for senior staff, and this is essentially to hire our replacements, and they can work side by side with us, so there's a seamless transition in services. And again, using the interest earnings on a central fire station bond is transfer $1 million to the construction account to offset some inflation costs. Our revenue variations are not much different from previous years. We're still seeing some steady growth with motor vehicle registrations. Interest income has been really valuable to the town for the last couple of years. We just talked about the Derry Recovery Trust to stabilize operating and the use of one-time expenses of surplus funds for onboarding a new town administrator and a planning director. On the expense side, personnel costs, including workers' comp, retirement, some solid waste disposal, vehicle maintenance, are all driving the expenses. We spoke of those 2 full-time positions we're proposing, and continue the implementation of our collective bargaining agreements with our employees. Now, here are the revisions on the FY25 budget. Is that, if you recall with the wastewater presentation, our plan was to design and construct the reconstruction of Lagoons 1 and 2 and bringing Lagoon 3 back online. Well, the EPA is yet to finalize our permit, and there may be some additional requirements for treatment. And, so we sat around, we kicked it around, and it made more sense for us to delay the construction part of that project, wait until the EPA completes its permit requirements and issues, then we have a complete understanding of what our obligations will be going forward. So instead of the construction project of a little over $12 million, well, we're recommending we remove that from the budget, but we add $600,000 to be paid from the sewer department fund balance for engineering. So once we receive the permit, and we'll have a clear and complete understanding what our obligations are, and so our engineers can be much more efficient designing the improvements, which may come back, sometime in the future, obviously. I don't know if it's gonna be the end of this year or next year's budget, but that'll be brought back to the council. So consequently, that reduces the wastewater treatment plant, the wastewater entire budget from $15.5 million to just under $4 million for FY25. And the other changes in capital outlay, if you recall, for those who were on the council back in FY18, we invested almost $2 million in our communication systems for police and fire. And a vital component, it's a tower at the current central fire. That needs to link with the antenna of the new central fire. And that work and a number of other technological and IT requirements cost about $500,000. So we recommend that we lease purchase that acquisition, similar to what we did with the original communication system. So it would increase the capital outlay to $2.4 million. It would increase the capital lease revenues by $500,000 to $897,000. And then that eventually will be repaid through the fire department capital reserve plan. So that will be absorbed over the next year. when we build that plan for FY26 to FY31. So all told, you'll see halfway down the sheet on the left-hand side, the total went from 77 to 66 million and 108. The revenues obviously correspondingly change as well, but the bottom right stays the same with the tax rate impact of $6.09. So there's no action on this tonight. It'll be brought to the council in formal resolutions at your May 7th council meeting. And again, this is just a summary showing the gross appropriation of just over 66 million with the revenues, the veterans credits, the overlay, and to be raised is just under just under $30 million. Our value we're estimating is going to increase for new construction outside of our TIF districts of about 20 million this year, and the projected town tax rate is $6.09. And this concludes the town budget portion of the public hearing.
Okay, do we have a, since this is a public hearing, a motion to open?
Move to open the public hearing. Second.
Motion by Brian, second by Dave to open the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is now open. If anybody in the public would like to come forward to ask any questions with regards to what Dave and Mark just brought forward, please feel free. Is there anyone online?
Seeing no one rise online, Mr. Chair.
Did Aaron come? Is Aaron online?
Yes, Councilor
Good
Spencer is
evening,
here.
Councilor Spencer.
Good evening. Sorry I was a little late.
Oh, it's quite all right.
Move to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing by Councilor Cherichello.
Second.
Second by Councilor Ganassi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody opposed? Open for councilor questions. Councilor Cherichello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things that I noticed on page 5, and this is more of a comment versus a question, but if you're looking at the CPI numbers and what the town actually spent percentage-wise, we've never gone over the cap except for this year, which is remarkable because I'm looking at 8 years. The last 8 years, if you look, CPI went up 1.9 in 2018. We actually approved the budget of 1.7. But as you go down those 8 years, there's only 1 year that we actually went to the cap. And of course, pressure on inflation is really kind of driving that fact that we had to do it this year. But I think that, A, is remarkable and it needs to be pointed out. Number 2, I just have a question on the gasoline lines, because I'm starting to see gasoline ticking back up. Are you going to be okay with that projection? You are, okay. And then the electricity lines, I know that went down, and I just don't know how, what we're paying for kilowatt now, what that number represents, and if we get the solar panels up and running, obviously we're going to get that lower rate. So there could be a potential savings there, I guess, too. But
Yeah, it's anticipated that the solar field will be online, I believe, February
okay,
so it'll catch the back quarter of our fiscal year. That's the current plan.
okay. And then lastly, the wastewater. And I see Tom's here. I think the feds came out with PFAS regulations, which are, I believe, stricter than what we actually currently have in New Hampshire, and I thought New Hampshire had really strict laws on that. Are we looking at that as well? Does that figure into any mitigation of that going through wastewater?
So the feds came out with PFAS regulations for drinking water, kind of coinciding with the state regulations. We will be required to monitor the wastewater discharge for PFAS, but there'll be no limits in the new permit for PFAS, just monitoring at this point.
Oh, at this point, but in the future, it could be
The
another
permit will be
issue.
for at least for 5 years.
Okay.
Once it's implemented, so it'll be some time out before we need to be concerned with that.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions from any other councilors? Councilor Spencer, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. I have one question on the veterans credit line item. Does that include both veterans credit and the disabled?
As currently authorized, that's correct.
It's both? Okay. Thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions, feel free to move into the CIP public hearing.
Okay.
Did you have a question? I'm sorry. Oh,
Yes. When would we make a motion on the veterans credit?
Not tonight, it would be at the next meeting.
Yeah?
Yeah, on that matter, we'll be better positioned to look at our revenues and where we're coming in. And that's part of the discussion I've had with the chair and the vice chair. So I got to talk to a session. Is he going to be at the next meeting or the meeting after? It's going to be in the one meeting in May. We'll have a better idea of how best to fund any adjustments the council is considering.
We are looking at some numbers based
Yeah.
on discussions that people have held. So in the next couple meetings, we'll get the feedback on that, and then we can make a supplemental appropriation.
Sounds good.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, capital improvements plan. As the council is aware, this is a budget planning document. Any projects in the CIP are not legally funded unless they're part of the council's approved annual budget. But we go through this, it's a 6-year program to give us a bit, same thing as the operating projections we do, gives us a good idea of the major projects in the near future and how best to fund those. Mark has really taken leadership in the CIP, where he meets with all department heads, develops the plan, makes recommendations, we review them. We meet with the planning board, I believe in February, where by statute and by charter, they have an opportunity to weigh in, and then we bring it to the council, which per the charter, the council needs to approve the CIP with or without modifications by June 1st. So we'll have that on your agenda for May 7th as well. The funding structure has changed in one respect, as the council had a great move last year and contributed more tax dollars to the fund. As I just discussed during the budget hearing, we used to plan on 1.5 million, and now we're planning on 1.575 in actual tax dollars to the plan. Doesn't include the police cruisers and road reconstruction, which is funded in other line items of the budget. And up until 8 years ago, zero of that was coming from the town's budget. It was all raised from fund balance, if we had the fund balance. So we eventually moved that up to about $300,000, and the council last year increased that to $650,000, which will really contribute to the stability of the plan and making sure that we have the tools that are safe and efficient for our employees to deliver services. The other areas, the other enterprise funds are ultimately funded by the customer. There are some state and federal grants for water and wastewater. There's a equipment grant from our cable provider, but primarily those are paid by the customers of all those three services. This is the FY25 to 30 plan. Based upon a recommendation, the fire will go up because of the capital outlay and the communications project. And wastewater will stay the same, even though we pulled it off this year's, because you'll definitely see that project occur in the next 5 years, probably a lot sooner. Major project is an off-road gator assigned to the fire department, used by all the departments, looking to secure an assistance to firefighting grant for battery-powered rescue tools and to continue to upgrade our ambulance equipment, including respiratory ventilators and cardiac monitors. This is just a synopsis of some of the major vehicle acquisitions. Some look new, actually they're not. Most of these vehicles and equipment are between 13 and 20 years old. So systematically replace these to keep them in good working order. You may recall that we just finished up a 4-year project of upgrading our traffic signals. Now we'd like to embark upon a similar project for sidewalks. That is in the budget this year. Also, it's like every other year, the town budgets about $25,000 for cemetery road repairs. And then I think we have a particular project on the East Derry Road sidewalk scheduled for this year. This is a trailer storage area, which is used in conjunction with our solid waste. That structure is actually down, I believe. It was taken down through a storm, so We have funds in the Public Works budget this year to repair that and actually replace it. These are the different projects that Owen is considering for the cable system. You recall, looking at the cable budget in the last public hearing, the budget is down. What we try to do, we try to ensure that the operating budget is paid through franchise fees, and then we use either unallocated fund balance or the grant from Comcast for equipment. And Owen and Mark have developed a 10-year plan on that, because, as you know, some people are cutting the cables, so some of our revenues are slowly diminishing. So we want to make sure that we anticipate that going forward. Major projects for wastewater, you can see there, except for the one second from the bottom, that's been delayed, but still looking at replacing the mini excavators, some water main upgrades. The Southern New Hampshire Regional Water Project, you may recall several years ago, we received a number of grants which will allow Derry to transport Manchester water north of our border to communities south. There's now a regional push to go to phase 2. Phase 1 anticipated carrying about 1 million gallons. Phase 2 will be up to 3.1 million gallons of water per day. And that's a $33 million cost, which is not to be borne by Derry taxpayers or ratepayers. That's all consisting of outside funding, both from other communities, from the state, and from the federal government. Again, that's not to be paid by Derry taxpayers. When you look at the budget, we approve it on May 7th. You can see we reduced the capital for the lagoon system, but not all the way down, because we do have an effluent sewer force main project for $650,000. Still in the budget, still needs to be completed. And we also have various equipment replacements for water and wastewater. And that concludes the CIP program for FY25 through 30.
If I could have a motion to open the public hearing, appreciate it.
Second.
So moved by Councilor Cherichello, second by Councilor Granessi. Again, this is the second phase of tonight's meeting, a public hearing on the capital improvements plan. If anybody has thoughts, comments, or questions from the audience, please feel free to come up and ask your question.
Seeing none online, Mr. Chair.
And, I'm sorry, thank you. Thank you, Charlie. We'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
I did make the motion.
Second by Dave. Yeah, go ahead.
I vote yes.
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 Yes. Okay, now we're open. Thank you, Charlie.
What about Aaron?
Huh? Aaron?
Yes, I vote yes as well.
Now we're open. Thank you, Councilor Hood.
Still seeing none, Mr. Chair.
Seeing none. Anybody here want to ask a question on the left-hand side, since the right-hand side seems to be all town employees?
Move to close.
Second. Oh, you got
Motion
it.
to close by Councilor Cherichello, second by Councilor Flood. On the motion,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Charlie, Doug?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
And yes by me. Questions from the council? Cherichello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one quick question. I noticed the sidewalks, but what equipment do we have to clear those sidewalks? Do we have multiple pieces?
Within the highway department, we have 2 sidewalk machines that are designated for, they have both blowers and blades. In the capital budget this year, we're replacing one of the blowers on one of the machines just to elongate. The motor itself is great on the actual unit itself, but we have to replace the blower, and that will be helping us sustain our sidewalks. So 2 machines, usually we can get through if we've had any breakages with one. And then we have some other smaller machines that if we had to push back with like a Bobcat style, we can also do that in a pinch if we had to in an emergency.
Okay, so we're all set. We don't
We are.
need extra.
Yep, we're in
equipment.
good shape.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else sitting here? Councilor Chairwoman Spencer, any questions from you?
No, I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next meeting will be on May 7th, which would be the council meeting and the adoption of the budget, followed by a May 21st meeting. In deference to Jack's question, just to follow up, we will be presenting at some point changes into the veterans credit. Counselor Spencer has been working with Dave as well as myself on some potential options to present to the board based on hearings. And I guess Dave, when Dave has all the numbers, we'll be able to present that check. Just
Perfect. Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be at the May 7th meeting.
Okay.
I'm going to try to call in, but I'll be traveling on something I'd set up before I ran.
And we don't necessarily have to take that action
Yep.
with the budget. And I'll let Erin speak to it if she'd like, but we have talked to Dave about potentially doing that
Perfect.
later in May or June, once we have all the numbers in front of us. I know we're waiting for some final numbers to come in. Erin, did you want to add anything with regards to that, please?
No, I think to your point, and Dave made the same comment, kind of we want to see what all the numbers look like before making any of those decisions. So depending on when we have all those numbers, that's when we can have that conversation.
And I think the team feels comfortable enough, Counselor Webb, that that decision can be made at any time to make those adjustments.
Perfect, thank you.
Is that okay? Yeah?
Yep.
Anybody
No.
else have any questions? No? Then I will be taking a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Counselor Cherichello, second by Counselor Flood to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Bye.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming.